Hey everyone, it's Julian, and you're never too old for bedtime stories. Tonight we're going to be reading Chapter 9 of My Friend Flicka by Mary O'Hara. At dinner, McLaughlin said the first thing he was going to do was to get Rocket into the corrals and into the chute, cut the piece of rope off her neck, and drive her out to the stable pasture and out onto the range with the other brood mares. "Until I get that done," he said, "I can't turn the gelded colts into the stable pasture. She'd get mixed up with them, and I'd have a hell of a time cutting her out again."
"How long will you keep the colts in the stable pasture?" asked Nell.
"About a week. I've got to keep my eye on them. They've been exercised daily. After that, they can go out onto the range with the others. You boys can give them a hard run every day. Ride 'em like hell. This is your chance to whoop it up and yell and act like cowboys."
"Why?" asked Howard.
"If there should be an infected one amongst them, which is always possible, you just stand around till he dies. Make him run. That causes drainage of the wound, stirs up circulation. If they're left alone, they'll stand around and mope and won't eat enough to keep up their strength."
Ken hadn't wanted his dinner. Even the smell of the food tightened the flesh at the base of his nostrils. Nell was looking at him. She said, "You can leave the table if you want, Ken. Put up my hammock for me. I may want it later." Ken went out to the terrace. Over one part was a lattice roof, made of aspen poles. It had been built to hold a canvas and make shade against the hot summer sun. To Nell it was the pergola, and she was training vines to run up the corner of poles. Someday they would all grow over the lattice and make shade enough without the canvas, and the sunlight would filter through, and the green leaves would hang down, and underneath it would be cool green and gold light. Ken stood up. The canvas had not yet been spread, and the direct, glaring light hurt his eyes. Ken got the hammock, hung it up near the pergola, and lay down on it, on his back, with feet and hands dangling over the sides, giving little shoves against the ground. The lilac bush, in the angle near the stone steps, and the flowers of the border gave off a strong fragrance in the heat. There were horses on the green, some of them drinking at the fountain, some cropping the grass, some just standing looking at the house. There were no stallions there, just mares and geldings. They do it to all the horses in the world, Ken thought. Only a few left for studs. And then to all the steers, only a few bulls left. All the wethers, only a few bucks left. Men weren't gelded, boys weren't, but male animals, the world over, being gelded and changed and never male again. Right this minute, thousands of knives cutting, oceans of blood running, men bending over hog-tied horses. Nell came out with her apron tied around her and her coffee cup in hand and stood looking at the sky. "Golly, it's hot," she said. "It's time we had the canvas up." She looked over at Ken as she stood stirring her coffee, and then sat down in one of the hickory chairs beside him. "It doesn't really do them harm, Ken," she said. Ken was surprised. She could always read his thoughts. "Doesn't it, Mother?" "No. It just has to be done. Don't feel badly about it, dear. It isn't nice to watch. I was sorry you had to. In a week, they won't know anything ever happened to them." "Won't they?" "Just look at Highboy and all of the great race horses. All gelded, Mother?" "Most of them. A few are stallions, but more are geldings." "Ken, you know the world is full of unpleasant things. Pain and operations and sickness and discomfort. You mustn't mind. That's just the way life is. Besides all that, there is health and goodness and soundness and fun and happiness too for horses as well as boys. Much more of the good things than of the bad." He turned to face her, beginning to smile, and she put out her hand and pushed the damp hair back from his forehead. "Take the good with the bad. That's the way grown-up people do. You've just got a little bit of growing up today. I really do feel an awful lot different, Mother, he said. When I got up this morning and didn't even know I was going to have a colt, it seems awful far away. People grow up that way, said Nell, in spurts. All of a sudden, they're years older. Ken's face became thoughtful. Besides, I could have a filly instead of a horse colt. Dad rides a mare. McLaughlin's voice, laughing loudly, came out of the kitchen window, and the horses on the green raised their heads, looking at the house, and walked expectantly towards it. McLaughlin appeared in the doorway. Look at the buggers, begging for oats. He disappeared again. There was always a bucket of oats hanging on a hook on an enclosed porch outside the kitchen door. He came out with the bucket and went down on the green to the horses. They crowded around him. On such occasions, he insisted on their good behavior. This meant observance of rules of fair play and turnabout. A horse that stuck his nose into the bucket and would not take it out would get a good smack on the side of the head. If they whirled and lashed each other in jealousy and greediness, he put the bucket behind him and delivered a lecture, the tone of his voice expressing such surprise and indignation that they would hang their heads and all but promise never to do it again. Sometimes he would be completely surrounded and hidden, and a scrimmage would start. Big bodies wheeling, rearing, heels lashing this way and that, hooves pawing the air. One would think he must be down and trampled. But always he would emerge, swinging the bucket in one hand, smacking the nose of this or that horse angrily with the back of the other hand, his voice rising in harsh reprimand. And gradually the horses would calm down again and follow him meekly. Ken, said his father, run down and open the gate to the calf pasture. I left the 4 foals with their dams in there yesterday, the ones that you and Howard are to halter break this summer. Let them come in here with this bunch. Ken ran down to the green, to the gate beside the corral of the cow barn, which opened into the calf pasture, and hooked it back, but no mares were in sight. Rob gave his trilling whistle, which, standing close beside him, you could hardly hear, but which carried a great distance. Presently there appeared a sharp head of a horse around the shoulder of the hill, which was at the upper end of the pasture. Then another, and another. 3 little colts came out with their free dancing steps, as if they had springs under their hooves. Soon all 4 mares with their foals were trotting towards the gate. They slowed up as they came through and walked down slowly into the green. Oh, look at Highboy and Tango, exclaimed Nell. Highboy, who had wandered some distance away and was nosing for clover on the side of the hill, had suddenly spied the mares, and something had excited him. A pretty black mare was looking at him, standing in a pose of excited recognition. Then, with loud neighs, the 2 rushed towards each other, and when they met, they touched their faces, pressed their cheeks together, and at last Highboy rose lightly, standing close beside her, and flung one foreleg over her neck. Rob and Nell and the boys were laughing. Reunion, said Rob. They were born the same spring and have always been sweethearts, and they were separated all through the winter, while I had the mares down in the meadow. Nell said, exactly the way I used to be with my best little girlfriend when we'd been away from each other for the summer. The most affectionate animal in the world, said Rob. You don't see the young ones leaving their mothers if they can help it. They stay in a family group. You often see a mare on the plains with a 4-year-old colt, and a 3-year-old, and a 2, and a 1, and a foal, all together. They don't break up unless something happens to make them, and they never forget. Highboy and Tango wandered away together. Tango's little black colt, about a month old, followed, trying to nurse. It's her first colt, said Rob. Looks like a good one, huh? Howard, hand me the bucket. This is a good chance to give the colts their initiation. He fed the mares first and then offered it to the colts. They would have been terrified, but seeing that their mothers were enjoying it, they nosed the bucket, gave it a sniff, and, hating the metal and the human smell of the hand, wheeled and pranced off. At a safe distance they turned, stood watching, and at last edged up again. Rob never missed a chance to instruct the boys in horse psychology and the right approach to training. "This is the beginning," he said, "of their getting used to human beings. It would have been better to start with these little fellows when they were just a few days old, as soon as they got their legs, and started out on their careers of being horses. They've been alone and free down in the meadows since they were born a few weeks ago, and that's time lost. Worse than lost, for they learned a world in which there are no human beings, just grass and horses and running water, trees, perhaps the strangeness of a wooden fence post and a wire fence. Nothing more. It's different from what they've learned, and now it's time to change their mind about the world. It's a world where humans take the first place. Human beings master them, and they have to obey. Humans are the most important of all, but they'll soon learn." "They're learning already," said Howard. "You can see them." "They learn from their mothers. They copy. They do everything their mothers do. That's why it's practically impossible to raise a good-tempered colt from a bad-tempered mare. That's why I'd never have any luck with the colts of the wire mares I get. The colts are corrupted from birth, just as wild as their mothers. You can't train it out of them." The light changed suddenly, and McLaughlin looked at the sky. The heavy cloud bank in the southwest had engulfed the sun, and a coolness came into the air. "It's gonna rain," he said. "Will you ride this afternoon, Nell?" "Later," she said. "I've got to bake my bread now before the fire goes down." "I'm going for the mail. Anything you want?" 2 cakes of Fleischmann's yeast, and Gus wanted tobacco, rough cut, the next time anyone went to the store." She went back into the house, and the boys ran to the big red Studebaker, where it stood on the hill behind the house. Howard got in the front seat, and Ken got in the back. Just about to let in the clutch, McLaughlin paused and looked at Howard. "By the way, Howard, when did you ride Highboy last?" "Yesterday afternoon." "I noticed his legs. You turned him in with dirty legs." I groomed him," Howard wriggled. "Yes, down to his knees." "He kicks." "And whose fault is that?" Howard sat in silence. "This would be a good time," said McLaughlin, "to take him up to the stables and groom him. He's right there where you can easily catch him." "Can't I go with you to the store first?" asked Howard. McLaughlin sat looking at the weather signs as if he had not heard. Just like his father to wait until a little fun was up and then choose that time to make him groom Highboy. He got out slowly. Ken climbed in the front seat. "Take out the stone from in front of the wheel," said his father. Howard obeyed, and the car slid down the hill. The gears gripped, the engine started, and it rattled over the cattle guard and was off down the stretch of straight gravel road, over the little stone bridge that spanned Lone Tree Creek, and on, up, and around the shoulder of the wooded hill, and out of sight. We'll read another chapter tomorrow night. Good night.